Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni meets with French President Emmanuel Macron and Slovakia's Robert Fico, with Ukraine war topping the discussions.
Dutch Prime Minister Dick Schoof has resigned, just hours after Geert Wilders pulled his party out of government.
Ukraine strikes bridge connecting Russia to Crimea with underwater explosives. Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has held talks with the leaders of France and Slovakia in Rome, with the war in Ukraine and a lasting peace deal for the country topping the agenda. Meloni first received Slovakia's Prime Minister Robert Fico, who arrived at her official residence late Tuesday afternoon. According to a joint government statement, Fico and Meloni discussed their support for peace in Ukraine and their commitment to the reconstruction of the country. Later on Tuesday, Meloni welcomed France's Emmanuel Macron for talks that covered Ukraine, Gaza, and relations with the EU and the Trump administration. Italy's government said that both countries have common positions on many issues and expectations were high for productive talks. But the leaders' opinions don't align on all issues. There have been differences of position regarding military support for Ukraine, with Macron suggesting sending troops to the country while Meloni ruling it out.
Denmark has officially quit the Frugal Four to focus on rearmament, Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen has announced. Denmark joined the so-called Frugal Four during the 2020 negotiations on the EU budget. The group of fiscally conservative countries also included the Netherlands, Austria and Sweden. But as the new budget talks approach, Copenhagen wants to switch sides.
As Danes, we will always be tough in the negotiations on the budget. We don't want money to be spent on nothing that is not necessary for Europe. So we will be tough, but being a part of the Frugal Four is no longer the right place for us.
From now on, Denmark will have a more flexible attitude towards the common EU budget, Frederiksen said, insisting defense spending should take precedence over all other priorities.
For me, the most important thing is to rearm Europe. That's my starting point and that's my conclusion in all discussions. Because if Europe is not able to protect ourselves and to defend ourselves, then it's game over at some point.
Denmark isn't the only one with a change of mindset. Sweden and Finland have also softened their positions, calling for fresh money to boost deterrence capabilities against Russia. The European Commission is expected to present the draft budget before the summer break. Once the proposal is on the table, the political debate will begin in full swing.
Dutch Prime Minister Dick Schoof has resigned from his position just hours after far-right politician Geert Wilders announced his Party for Freedom would pull out of the ruling government coalition. Schoof is expected to submit the cabinet's resignation to King Willem-Alexander by the end of the day on Tuesday, but says the coalition will remain as a caretaker government up until the new election.
In de ministerraad hebben we gesproken over de ontstane situatie en geconcludeerd dat met het vertrek van de PVV er onvoldoende draagvlak is in de Tweede Kamer voor dit kabinet.
It comes after a turbulent day in Dutch politics, with Wilders declaring his withdrawal from government following the coalition's refusal to accept his immigration policy. Wilders' 10-point plan, which he presented last Monday, called for a complete halt to asylum, a temporary stop to family reunions for asylum seekers with refugee status, and the return of all Syrians who have applied for asylum or are in the Netherlands on temporary visas. The Dutch government is now teetering on the brink of collapse, paving the way for snap elections in the Western European nation.
Ukraine on Tuesday said its forces struck the Kerch Bridge in Crimea, a key piece of Russian infrastructure built by Moscow after it illegally annexed the Ukrainian peninsula in 2014. Ukraine Security Service (SBU) released the video of the attack on Tuesday, showing the explosion underwater. The SBU said the operation, which took several months to plan, severely damaged the bridge's underwater supports. Ukraine has hit the bridge twice before, in October 2022 and July 2023, partially damaging it. The Kerch Bridge links Russia and the Ukrainian peninsula and is a critical supply and transport route for Russian forces to the occupied Ukrainian territories, specifically in southern Ukraine.
Parts of the floor above the Pride salt mine in Romania have caved in as a result of heavy flooding, leaving parts of the mine at risk of collapsing. Dozens of homes that are at risk of collapse were evacuated. In order to prevent even further flooding, Romanian officials diverted a stream that runs near the salt mine.
Nu vă lasă? Că v-au evacuat?
Da.
Știți când vă puteți întoarce?
Nu știu când se termină aici.
We wanted to go through Valea Sari, but there is not possibility, there is no chance. There is a lot of water and the path is broken, so we had to turn back.
The Pride salt mine is one of Europe's largest salt reserves and also serves as a crucial tourist attraction. The government activated the European Civil Protection Mechanism, and several European specialists are working to find solutions. The impact has extended to neighboring countries, where freshwater rivers have experienced rising salinity levels due to leakage from the salt mine. To contain the overflow, local authorities created a defensive barrier using sandbags. However, with meteorologists forecasting rain in the coming days, several areas remain on high alert.
Visited by more than 500,000 tourists annually, the small Transylvanian town of Praid is now almost deserted. The old salt mine, which used to be the main attraction, has been completely flooded for the last month, and heavy rain has put the roof of the mine at high risk of collapsing. The authorities have evacuated 45 houses and created a security perimeter where no one has access, and the streets are now deserted. In this total silence, only the terrifying sound of some collapsing rocks can be heard. Unfortunately, the huge amount of water is still inside the mine. The government has released an emergency fund of 60 million euros, and the European Commission has been asked to activate the European support mechanism for the affected area. From Praid, for Euronews Romania, Cristi Petrescu and Andrei Nourescu.
Premier Donald Tusk po przegranej swojego kandydata na prezydenta Rafała Trzaskowskiego ogłosił, że zwróci się do Sejmu o wotum zaufania dla swojego rządu. Wniosek ma zostać rozpatrzony na dodatkowym posiedzeniu Sejmu, które odbędzie się 11 czerwca. Choć sam Donald Tusk jest dziś wielkim nieobecnym w Sejmie, wotum zaufania jest tutaj tematem numer 1. Wysłuchaliśmy opinii polityków kilku frakcji. Większość koalicjantów odczytuje to jako symboliczny ruch premiera i zapowiedziało, że zagłosuje za udzieleniem wotum.
Oczywiście, że zagłosuję za. Skoro taką decyzję podjął premier i uznał, że rząd potrzebuje takiego jednoznacznego potwierdzenia wotum zaufania, potwierdzenia większości w Sejmie, znaczy po prostu tak jest.
My oczywiście poprzemy Donalda Tuska w tym wotum, bo koalicja ma trwać i trwać będzie.
Inni parlamentarzyści, zwłaszcza ci z prawej strony, kategorycznie podkreślali, że będą głosować przeciw.
Koalicjanci Tuska wiedzą, że nie muszą wybierać pomiędzy Tuskiem a Armagedonem. Mogą dzisiaj wybierać inne warianty i oczywiście tych wariantów jest kilka. Jednym z nich jest rząd techniczny czy rząd ekspercki, tak jak wczoraj sformułował to pan prezes Jarosław Kaczyński.
Można mówić, że to jest właśnie odbudowa państwa, a poza tym oczywiście sprawy gospodarcze, sprawa kryzysu finansów publicznych, sprawa służby zdrowia, sprawa bezpieczeństwa, powrót do zbrojenia, bo przecież to zostało w istocie zahamowane, polityka zagraniczna, relacje ze Stanami Zjednoczonymi, ale także te sprawy europejskie.
Wybory prezydenckie w Polsce zadziałały niczym referendum w sprawie skuteczności rządu. Koalicja musi wyciągnąć wnioski i ustawić agendę programową na najbliższe 2,5 roku. Opozycja będzie regularnie domagała się wymiany premiera, a w kuluarach mówi się, że kohabitacja rządu z Karolem Nawrockim może okazać się trudniejsza niż z obecnym prezydentem Andrzejem Dudą. Z Warszawy dla Euronews Aleksandra Gałkareczko.
Sustainable transport is one of the cornerstones of the green transition. But making cities less reliant on motor vehicles isn't just good for the environment, it also helps protect public health. That's the message behind events like World Bicycle Day, celebrated globally on June 3rd. As far as eco-friendly transport goes, cycling is difficult to beat. But in order to encourage people to opt for a bicycle, it is crucial safe and well-designed infrastructure to support them is in place.
Tutte le grandi città, oramai anche le megalopoli come New York e Londra, stanno investendo molto sulla ciclabilità urbana perché è un mezzo molto veloce, poco ingombrante, non inquinante, che quindi crea benefici a tutti, anche a chi la bicicletta non vuole o non può utilizzarla. È un tassello importante della mobilità urbana, ovviamente non l'unico, ma non è un qualcosa di nicchia o una scelta particolare. Diciamo, tutte le città dovrebbero puntare sulla promozione della bicicletta come mezzo di trasporto quotidiano.
In Rome, cyclists often face challenges caused by other road users. Cycling initiatives say double parking is a major obstacle and also believe stricter law enforcement and increased checks are necessary.
Attualmente muoversi in bici a Roma il principale ostacolo è la doppia fila. Per chi non va in bici, diciamo, può non sembrare scontato, ma uno dei rischi maggiori sono le sportellate dalla doppia fila e un maggior rigore, maggior controllo, soprattutto per la guida con lo smartphone in mano. Oramai girando per Roma possiamo notare tranquillamente, osservando un attimino la strada, che il livello di distrazione degli automobilisti è molto alto.
Besides rules, a cultural shift is needed too. While some may opt to drive because they believe it will be quicker, for short to medium distances, cycling may be the faster mode of transportation.